Hi everyone, and welcome to the final episode of Movie Makeover Masterpiece. It's been a film fiasco, one right after the other, with plenty of special guests, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments below if you'd like me to do more of these, or if you just like this 10-part series. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and enjoy this final entry. For the final episode, the always stylish Hilary Kennedy joins me to talk about the romantic comedy Isn't It Romantic? Rebel Wilson stars as a wallflower architect living in New York who hates rom-coms. She thinks that they are boring and bland and gives women and men false expectations, and she will tell anyone who will listen about her opinion. However, after a head injury, she wakes up in a PG-13 romantic comedy where she is beautiful, bold, and men notice her. Though the premise is interesting and it features a stellar cast, it had some misfires with the plot, the direction of the film, and even with some of the acting that made it seem disconnected with both critics and audiences. With the always stylish Hilary, I am prepared and willing to fix this film. But the question is, how do we fix this film? Hilary, how do we fix this film?
Man, I had such high hopes for this film because there haven't been as many romantic comedies lately, which has been a bummer. And for somebody like me, I mean, I like all genres, but there's just something great about going to a mindless, feel-good romantic comedy. So I really had high hopes for this. One of the things that I would normally not complain about when it comes to a movie is that it's too short, because I feel like some of them go on for so long and they lose me. Because after about 2.5 hours, I start to mentally check out unless it's just truly like firing on all cylinders. This one is not even quite an hour and a half, I think, and it feels like that. So I feel like it's kind of hard to get invested in some of the characters in such a short amount of time.
One thing, too, is I feel like with Rebel Wilson plays the main character, and by the way, spoiler alerts for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's available for rent at Redbox and on Vudu, but me and Hilary, we are going to have to get into spoilers for this conversation, so just so you know. But one thing I thought about her character, which I am not a huge Rebel Wilson fan, but, and we'll talk more about this when we talk about the casting, but I do feel like they kind of set you up for a particular arc, but then when it comes to the climax, when she has that scene where, you know, she's disrupting the wedding and she's like, I'm really in love with my best friend, guy friend, and all this, I felt like, and then, of course, then she says, no, I'm actually in love with myself. I felt like, where did that come from? Like, they kind of teased it in the opening of the film.
Yes.
Do you agree with that? Like, I felt like that just came out of left field. I wasn't expecting it.
100% this, and I'm so glad that you brought this up, because that was truly the major glaring thing to me about the whole movie is you keep waiting for maybe a plot twist or, you know, something exciting to happen, and then when she has that moment where she's like, I choose me, it did come out of nowhere. And I almost feel like that was maybe part of the trend back in the rom-com era of 2019 when this film came out. Because there was another film, an Amy Schumer film called I Feel Pretty. And it was basically the same kind of moment where she realizes, like, I really need to love myself more. Like, this is really about me, learning to love and accept who I am. And that's not what I pay money to see when I go see a romantic comedy. I want to see two people fall in love and live happily ever after. And so you're right, like, this totally came out of left field and wasn't what we were looking for in this film, I felt like.
Yeah, and especially with all the build-up, and of course you've got, one of the things I did kind of was chuckling at is because growing up with a mom and a sister, I had a smorgasbord of romantic comedies to watch, and one of the things I did think was kind of funny about the plot was how, you know, and they were before, for those of you who don't know, Rebel Wilson, her character, gets hit in the head. She gets mugged, and she gets hit in the head. And when she wakes up, New York is all pretty. It's not gross. The subway's nice. And she wakes up in an ER, which is more like a hotel room than an emergency room, and all this stuff. And I always thought that was kind of funny because even on a rom-com that I like Hitch, New York is portrayed as like this clean, vibrant city, and so I did think that that was kind of funny. And isn't it romantic that they kind of made fun of that trope where they take a city like New York or L.A. and me being from L.A. I can say this. New York, L.A., and Chicago, where like they're these really dirty, grimy cities, but in all these movies, they're portrayed as like this happy place where everyone's friends, and I did kind of like that
Very
trope.
romantic.
Yeah, exactly. What is there? Was there something in there that you thought was kind of funny that they were kind of poking fun at?
Oh, definitely. And I feel like one of those things was a missed opportunity too. They poke fun of the things that you see in all romantic comedies where there's like the funny gay best friend and, someone is trying to stop a wedding and say how they really feel. But one of the moments in the film is you realize that there's going to be this makeover montage, and Rebel Wilson's character Natalie shuts it down and it's like, nope, 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 we're not doing the makeover montage. Kind of like, in Pretty Woman, where all of a sudden she goes from, lady of the evening on the street to all of a sudden this polished, refined, beautiful woman, and she goes shopping on Rodeo Drive and has this big transformation. And in this movie, they make fun of that and they tease that, but then they actually don't show one. And I think that was a missed opportunity to really poke some fun at it and just go a little further with it. And they didn't. So I love that they brought it up and poked fun at it, but I wish that they had really just gone all in.
Yeah, one of my favorite romantic comedies, and I have a list of ones I watch without complaining, and one of those is Last Chance Harvey with Dustin Hoffman and Emma Thompson, and they have that montage. There's a scene where Dustin Hoffman, he plays this older gentleman who's there for his daughter's wedding, but he's upset because she wants her stepfather to walk her down the aisle, so he actually leaves the reception, and he meets this woman who works for an airline that he had met previously and was kind of rude to her. They go on a date in London, and she convinces him to go back, but he says, "I'll only go back if you go with me." But she's in her airline clothes, so they do this montage where he's like buying her a dress, and it's it's actually one of the best parts of the movie, because there's one part where she comes out and she's like in this Dutch girl outfit, and he makes her twirl, and just to make fun of her, and she doesn't realize it. So I agree with you. I think that was another big missed opportunity. One of the things that I thought was really funny is, like you said, she has the quirky gay best friend, and then she has like the female rival. And I always thought like that is more like a 90s era rom-com thing, because if you watch like I mentioned Hitch earlier, the main female protagonist in that film, she doesn't really have a female rival. All the girls are friends in this movie. And so I thought that was an interesting trope, and I thought, I haven't seen that where there's that competition. Normally it's like a potential mother-in-law, like in Sweet Home Alabama.
Yes.
I didn't. So I kind of thought that was out of left field, where they were kind of saying rom-coms pit women against each other, and I never really got that impression. Like I said, from the smorgasbord I've seen. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I think that you're right, that's something we haven't seen in a while. I thought it was an interesting thing to have. So she's in this alternate universe, and in reality, you get to see her best friend transform into her arch rival, which I thought was interesting for the actress playing that role, because she really got to play both sides of it very well, and I thought she did a great job. But yeah, it does seem like they were maybe trying to make a point with some of these films that these rom-coms do pit women against each other, but this time they weren't fighting over a man necessarily. I mean, Priyanka Chopra's character, I guess, towards the end, but it wasn't the whole film long, which I thought was kind of nice. And they really did a lot of nods to Pretty Woman, which I liked, because I think a lot of women, maybe not millennials, but maybe the generation before them and before them, love Pretty Woman. A lot of women say that's like their favorite romantic comedy. And in that film, there really wasn't a female rivalry either. I mean, there were a lot of females that were friends and kind of helping each other out. So it's interesting to see how some films really make that a focus and then others don't.
Yeah, I do think that's kind of odd. And one of the things I have to highlight is they play that song over and over again while she's in her alternate reality, where it's 1,000 Miles,
Yes.
and that song has ever been immortalized by the film White Chicks. For those who haven't seen it, it's about these two black male FBI agents who go undercover as white women in this fashion organization, and they've got like molds and stuff. And Terry Crews is in it, and he plays like this football star who falls in love with one of the FBI agents, not realizing that she's actually a black male. He thinks that she's just a white woman, and in the car, she's trying to like get him to dump her, so she plays that song, and then Terry Crews, this big buff guy, goes, "How did you know? I love this song!" And then he starts singing it, and that song. And so I thought it was funny that they referred back to that song, because it kind of like you hear it all the time, like da na 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 na, and every once in a while I'll hear it playing like in a store. What did you think about that pick? 'Cause I thought that was actually kind of spot on for the film.
Oh, it's absolutely perfect. And the fact that they also had singing and dancing in the film, because so many romantic comedies do center around there being a dance scene where suddenly everyone knows the choreography. Like, you're out to dinner, or you're, walking through the streets of New York, and suddenly somebody bursts into song. And I loved, if you ever saw the movie 500 Days of Summer, they have something similar that happens there too, where all of a sudden they just bust out into a montage of singing and dancing. And I love that, because they were making fun of it in this movie, but it's also enjoyable. So I love that they were able to both poke fun at and benefit from having
Right.
these songs and these dance sequences in the film.
And that's actually a perfect transition to the next part, where I want to talk about the cast, because I actually really like the cast. And like I said, normally I'm not a huge Rebel Wilson fan. I know I'm probably going to anger all my followers here, but I'm not a fan of Pitch Perfect. But that's not because of Rebel Wilson. I just don't like those movies. The first one, I'll watch the first one, but I don't like the second and third one.
Same here.
Okay,
I walked out of the third one.
Oh, wow.
I didn't even finish it. And that rarely happens, but I just thought it was so terrible that I couldn't sit through the third one.
Oh, that's hilarious. But I felt like Rebel Wilson was actually the right choice for this film. She hit all the notes perfectly. I thought she played the character really well. And then when she realizes she's in this alternate reality where New York is so beautiful and all the men pay her attention, that her reaction is spot on. What do you think?
I agree. I think she was a wonderful choice for this film. And for people who do like the Pitch Perfect franchise, I'm sure that they probably enjoyed seeing her and Adam Devine together again. I liked him too. I feel like they have a really good chemistry. They just have a really good rapport where you can tell they feel very comfortable, and they're able to be goofy and have fun together. But she's a great comedian, I think, in the right role. And this was a great one for her. And I like that they made the film just about a woman who struggles with these perfect ideals of romance, because she hadn't experienced them, and they didn't make it about her looks or her size or all of it, because I feel like that is a lot of what she gets cast in, and this really wasn't about that. So I like that they just had her as like a quirky, funny, kind of jaded leading lady.
Yeah, I agree with that. And now there is one cast who I just don't think he was right for the part, and it's not a statement about his acting, but I just didn't think Liam Hemsworth was right for, even in the alternate universe. I didn't think he was right for the boyfriend, and I know he actually is Australian, but in this movie his accent sounded fake, and it was driving me crazy.
Australian.
Huh?
It was extra Australian.
It was extra Australian, right? And so, like, his brother Chris, who plays Thor in the Marvel franchise, and he was recently in a movie called Extraction, where he used his Australian accent. I actually found out he was originally supposed to be British, but he asked the producers, "Hey, can I be from Australia? I'm always from somewhere else. Let me be an Australian." And so, and it was really good, but I just felt like Liam, it was like you said, it was just extra, and it got to the point where it was like when they were on their ice cream date, I almost wanted to mute it every time he opened his mouth. So I was like, oh my gosh, what is up with this accent? What, do you agree or disagree with that?
So I feel like for the most part, he was chosen for this role for his aesthetics because even if he was on mute, I think a lot of us would still be just watching it, glued to it anyway.
Well,
Um,
that's more on the other side of the equation.
yeah, so I felt like I mean, I liked him. I thought he was funny. They probably could have cast someone else who might have fit the bill a little better, might have the jokes might have landed a little better. I will say with a lot of the things that he said and did, you could tell they were playing for laughs. But I actually saw this movie in the theater because when it came out, I believe it was Valentine's week of 2019, which was the perfect time to launch this movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I remember certain moments in the film where he kind of has this joke or something funny, but nobody laughs. And then it just makes it awkward. And so I think that, the casting there probably could have been better as far as like maybe some of the comedic reads, but as far as the actual like aesthetics of the casting, I think they did great.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. And also, you mentioned Adam Devine. I felt like I should mention Betty Gilpin because who plays the friend, and then in the alternate reality, the rival. Because I love Betty Gilpin. I think she's a really great actress. She was in The Hunt, which is not a romantic comedy, by the way, but she did great in that role as well. And so I thought she did, like you said earlier when we were talking about the story, she was great as going from the best friend to the rival. I thought that she did a great job with both of those roles.
She did. I mean, it was really cool to see that dramatic shift.
Mhm.
I also thought, just on a side note, with another aspect of the film, the hair and makeup department did an amazing job because you
Mhm.
see a pretty big transformation with both Rebel Wilson's character and Betty Gilpin's characters, where they go
Yes.
from looking kind of like the tired, stressed out New Yorkers to all of a sudden being in this glam universe where they just looked amazing. And I felt like that contributed a lot too to their performances, where you really bought into, especially Betty Gilpin's character when she becomes sort of the villain and the rival. But she's fantastic. I love her in pretty much anything.
Oh yeah, same here. And this brings up something like we had kind of talked before we started recording is about romantic comedies. And me being a guy, I do have a list of romantic. I won't go through the whole list here, but I do have a list of romantic comedies that I watch without complaining. And ones like Must Love Dogs is on there. Last Chance Harvey I mentioned. Uh, there's one with Josh Duhamel. I think it's called When in Rome, and I actually liked that movie, but I found out a lot of people hate it. But I was like, oh, I actually think this is kind of funny, and it has John Heder in it, who played Napoleon Dynamite, of course. So just to give you an idea
Yeah.
of what generation I come from, but it does seem like it's kind of a lost genre now, where they hit their high note, especially in the early 2000s, and it seems like in 2010s they kind of tapered off, and so you have movies like Isn't It Romantic, which kind of lampoons it a little bit. What
Hmm.
do you think happened to the genre? Or do you think it's still there now, but it just isn't the same as kind of it was? Like you mentioned, Pretty Woman. I'm actually and there's another one. Hugh, oh my gosh, Hugh Grant. I think he's in a ton of them. Music and
Yes.
Lyric. That's actually one on my list. I love Music and Lyric.
Nice.
Yeah, that's actually a really good film.
He's in
Where
Notting
do you think?
Hill.
Yeah, Notting Hill. That's a good one.
Yep.
So what do you think? Where do you think this genre? Why do you think this genre petered out, and do you think it'll come back?
I think people still want it. I think people are still clamoring for romantic comedies. I think that's why the Hallmark Channel does so well because
Right.
people really like to have a mindless fall in love, just a feel good, so that when you finish watching it, you may have wasted a little bit of your time because it's so predictable, but you still leave feeling better about your day. So, and Netflix also keeps churning out a lot of kind of more teen-oriented romantic movies, but I think
And
people still
cheesy.
want it. Yeah, very cheesy, but I think people do enjoy them still. I I also feel like maybe it would help revive the genre if we found some couples that we wanted to see in multiple films together that will follow from one film to another, like we did with Julia Roberts and Richard Gere. They did several films together. I'm trying to think of who else. There's been a couple where you were like, okay, and people kind of
Oh,
like
Tom
what
Hanks and
Rebel
Meg
Wilson did.
Ryan. I think
Exactly, yes.
they
Like
did
You've
three
Got
films
Mail
together.
and exactly. So I feel like we'll follow them to multiple films. For a while there, people were churning them out and they just weren't very good. And Matthew
Mhm.
McConaughey, who I love in many, many things, but he did a handful of romantic comedies that just weren't that great. And you could tell that these films were just kind of thrown together and put out there to make money and nothing else. And they really weren't thinking about great writing and they were just hiring actors they thought fit the bill, but maybe weren't the best casting choices. So it's almost like the studios just sort of gave up trying and were just throwing stuff together. And then when people didn't respond because they fell flat, it's like the genre just sort of went away a little bit. But people
Mhm.
like Netflix, they are reviving them. So I'm hoping that the movie studios will take notice and also start putting out some even better and better films because I miss them. It shouldn't just be Valentine's Day week where we get,
Right.
a couple of romantic options.
Well, what are some of your favorites?
Oh man, I loved You've Got Mail. I also loved Meg Ryan was in a movie called French Kiss, which a lot of people don't remember.
Yeah, I don't
Trying to
think
think
I've
if
seen
it
that
was
one.
Kevin Kline that was in that movie, but it was really good. Pretty Woman is just a classic. Anytime that E or one of those networks is running it, I will stop and watch it. Um, those are all my go-tos. And then, of course, now, like I said, if they're not running them, or She's All That, that was also a good one from the early 90s or mid 90s. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'll watch some of the Netflix and Hallmark movies until they start cranking out some more good ones, like the ones from, 90s to the very early 2000s.
And hopefully, I'm always happy to see when a genre gets revitalized, even one that I'm not a huge fan of. But like I said, I have a couple of that are my favorites. Like I think I mentioned Must Love Dogs. One of the reasons is John Cusack is actually one of my favorite actors,
I
and
love
him and
him.
Diane Lane, right? It's Diane Lane. They
Uh-huh.
have really good chemistry in that movie, and they hit all the funny notes, all the serious notes. So that's one reason. And then Christopher Plummer's in it. You can never go wrong with Christopher Plummer.
Yes, he is incredible in
So,
everything.
so I've got one last question for you. When it comes to this particular film, isn't it romantic? If you were the producer and or director, what are a couple of tweaks you would have made to fix the film?
Gosh, I think the first thing that I would have done is maybe spend a little more time on some scenes with characters really making you want to invest in their relationship, why they care about them, why we care about them as an audience viewer. But also, like you mentioned at the beginning, I would get rid of the whole I choose me, I need to love myself moment at the end. I just want to see two people get together. I would love to have seen her and her love interest Josh have this moment where he leaves his bride at the altar and they run off in the sunset together. Something that has more of a payoff. I
Mhm.
just felt sort of bamboozled by that at the end, so I would change that too. And just maybe even adding 10 extra minutes to the film, cutting down some of the singing and dancing montage, maybe a little more makeover montage.
Mhm.
And I think those little tweaks would have made a bit of a difference.
All right. And where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram and I'm at Hilary Kennedy. It's just Hilary with one L. And my Twitter handle is the exact same thing.
And of course, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Parler. They're all at Real Jacob Berry. My Facebook is Author Jacob Berry. Be sure to like and subscribe to Studio Jake. And thank you so much for watching this series. It was a 10-part movie makeover masterpiece. And of course, I'm really excited to have the finale with Hilary Kennedy. She's one of my favorite guests. I love having her on to talk about stuff. And I think it ended perfectly talking, isn't it romantic, a 2019 film, because all the ones I had done before were older, so it was nice to talk about a newer film. Let me know in the comments what you think about the series and if I should do a similar one or if you would like more movie makeover masterpieces. Just let me know. And I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.